Hello. I want to talk a little bit about the real natural state of living within a greater community of intelligent life and the fact that we're surrounded by it. There is a naturalness to it, meaning there is something about it that is so natural within you. When we think about that kind of thing, we might have reactions to it as if, it's just so alien, it's just so different, it's so, the realization of it, especially, its presence in the world right now with races that are not really here to support humanity, but are here to take advantage of a situation because of this transition, because of for their own reasons. Coming into contact with that can be pretty abrupt, pretty abrasive, pretty shocking, but like the new message says, we're like the young adolescent that suddenly finds themselves in a city that has a rather long history. And just like any city, there are bad apples. You can be taken advantage of. Your naivety can be taken advantage of. Your expectations, your assumptions. But you're adolescent. You're bright-eyed. You're hopeful. But you can just so easily go in a direction that would probably not be a good idea. The new message says this transition into the greater community of intelligent life has happened countless times with other races that have been allowed to evolve in their own worlds. And it's such a natural thing. Of course, there's like two aspects of it. There's technological, that needs to be there in order for us to reach that threshold. But more importantly, really, is the spiritual aspect. Widening that to encompass this greater community. And it's very natural. It's like an innate thing. It's so innate that, I'm hesitant to use the word instinctual or intuitive, because it's really connected to a much deeper part of you. Of course, your instinct and your intuition plays into that as well. We're not isolated from the universe. We're connected to it. People have had, people who are very sensitive in this world, they've had connections with other people, very much. Even people that might be on the other side of the planet. People have experiences of deep knowing. And when this expands to encompass a much greater reality involving other races, you might start having experiences like that. But there's this great quote from Secrets of Heaven that says, the more you develop, the more you will start feeling things, sensing things. You may receive things. You may even feel like there's certain kinds of contact taking place that maybe aren't even connected to the intervention. Something that is more broad and that is more connected to your deeper nature. You might even sense things like that. And in becoming more sensitive, this is just a huge, paraphrasing of it, right? It's just a big paraphrasing. But just because you're becoming more sensitive does not necessarily mean you are wise yet. A lot of things are maybe opening up for you. It's opening of itself, especially through taking steps to knowledge. Things will begin opening. And it will seem very natural. As if, like, this is just, it's powerful, but it's also natural. But it doesn't mean you are wise yet. If you think about it in terms of the adolescent in the city, there's so much there. There are so many different expressions of intelligence that might be experienced. And being the bright-eyed, wide-eyed adolescent, you just might be like in Times Square, just like a rough analogy. You're just like, kind of like, what's this, what's that? But it doesn't mean you have wisdom yet. It doesn't mean you really know what you're doing yet. That's why, like, the 3 mandates, really, that the Allies of Humanity briefings and the New Message always emphasize. To be a free and self-determined race in this greater environment, you need self-sufficiency, discretion, and unity as a race. Otherwise, you will be taken advantage of. It's just how it goes. Just like if you were in a city. If you didn't have self-sufficiency, you would be seeking for help and guidance wherever you could find it, even from beings that are less than virtuous. If you didn't have discretion, you're just giving your secrets away. You're giving away your weaknesses. You're displaying your strengths and certain things that could be taken advantage of by hustlers, right? Hustlers. And if you're not unified within yourself, and you don't have supportive relationships within yourself, or even within that environment, that things that are unshakable, if you're not united within yourself, you could easily become confused and you can easily be taken advantage of. Again, it's all about being taken advantage of if you don't have these 3 things in place. Very easily taken advantage of. So, having street smarts, being streetwise, so to speak, in this opening that's taking place is really important. And some people, you can tell in the spiritual communities and even in other communities that might be looking at it more scientifically, the possibilities of it, there isn't much streetwise conclusions being made. They're just kind of walking right into it. People are, especially in the spiritual realm, people are being given experiences. They don't know where it's coming from. Not really. They're just kind of being bombarded with experiences. And the fact that it's so new, it's so novel, it's so interesting in a way, they're just going to go ahead and blindly trust it. Kind of like a hustler who is really good at what they do with hustling. They can dazzle you. They can make you think you're going to win big money with this card game. Pick a card, Oh man, you won. They might even let you win a couple times. And then you put more money in it, and then it's just gone. They're like, whoops, sorry. And you're like, oh shit. Oh shit. They know what they're doing because they've done it before. The New Message says that races that are in this position, they're called scavenger races. They're like in any city, they've been driven, like beings that have been driven out of necessity into that kind of behavior. Just out of necessity. Because of their own history. They've just been pushed into a corner through bad decisions their own ancestors have made, like many thousands and thousands of years before that. So, and all kinds of compromises to their personal freedom were made. Spirituality became less and less of a focus. Everything just became about gathering resources, learning how to manipulate, learning how to get in certain worlds, learning how to wheel and deal, so to speak. learning how to portray yourself as maybe something a race might want, especially emerging races such as ourselves that are, again, just wide-eyed, hopeful, having wild expectations maybe. We can be very easily taken advantage of. And they find inroads into that easily. But like the Allies of Humanity briefings say, even within our region of space, this kind of intervention has happened in their worlds. And they've been able to throw it off eventually. Some of them it's taken a little longer than others in order to see what's going on. Sometimes they may have believed it was a good thing for a little while, and then they realized, oh, wait, this is not a good thing. You know, this is the greatest transition that any race can make. It can be the most difficult, the most tumultuous, the most everything. It can also be the most clarifying and enlightening. So kind of all these things are happening at once. Very difficult, but also very clarifying. And the spiritual nature of that emergence is so important. There are people in the world who have a history there. In order to come into a, physical existence, a lot of, it's really important for you to actually have amnesia. To be a physical, sentient being, it's important to have amnesia about where you've been, what your experience really is, so that you can become a functional member of that society, of that world. You need to learn its ways. You're taking on so much, you're just getting in the wheelworks of all of that within a particular world. But there are people here coming into the world who do have a much longer history in that environment and may be gravitating to this kind of thing quite a bit. Even people who aren't necessarily spiritual, but who have a very strong interest in space. They may have a history as well. Something in them is like driving in that direction. People who are naturally very intuitive, maybe shamanic. For someone like that to take steps to knowledge it opens up so much, and you start to understand the naturalness of the situation, even when it's really abrupt and abrasive and even shocking with these scavenger races that are here, that are pretty... The new message says these beings are not well respected in this region of space. They're not respected. They're certainly not looked to as leaders or guides or anything like that. They're not role models, certainly not. They're like the most dangerous beings on the block, if you think about it in terms of the city analogy. They're the bad apples on the block, who are just, and in a way, that's how you can see it as this is natural. There's competition within our world. Shit happens in our world. People are pushed into very difficult situations in our world. They're forced to do things just to survive that can seem very unpleasant to onlookers. So in that way, you can understand where they're coming from. It doesn't mean you condone it, but you can understand why they're doing what they're doing. It does not mean you condone it. They need to be thrown off. It needs to be understood that they should not be here. Okay? but being able to understand why they're doing what they're doing. The desperation of their whole existence, in a way. They may, the new message says, like, they may feel very like they have peace in their social cohesion. The few different races that are here doing this nasty business, trying to manipulate humanity and eventually guide humanity, they may feel like they have peace. They feel very secure in their social cohesion because they're so tight, sort of like a gang. When you, like in a city, like they bond together, they bind together, and that makes them feel like they're a family. There is great safety. There's cohesion there. There may even be some level of peace, and they do this in order to have strength. Because if you're just left alone, dangling out there, trying to find resources all by yourself as just like a straggler, it's going to be even more difficult. So the races that are in the worst positions, they gather together, they bond together. Some of them are even in competition with each other over what they're doing here. They're not all on the same page. There's a lot of competition. And just understanding that it is nature, just like in this world, even not just with humans, but with animals. There is competition. Things happen. Maybe there's a drought one year. Maybe the water hole, like in the Sahara, it was really dry that year. Or, maybe not the Sahara, but, in Central Africa, in some places that are getting closer to a desert region, but that does get some rain. That rain is precious. And if it goes without rain for a long enough time, for 1 year, that water hole gets shorter and shorter. The alligators that are in it, I've seen shows about this. It just turns into a mud pit. And even if there is a little bit of water left, the hippos, the alligators, the baboons, the lions that need this water, they just get closer and closer together, and conflict starts to become more frequent because of the shrinking amount of water. And in some ways, it's even more opportunistic for, say, alligators. In a way, they're getting more opportunities for a meal because there's so many animals just trying to get a drink of water. They just grab one, take it down. There's a lot of fighting amongst the animals that are, it's not like always fighting, but there is more conflict. And you can think about that in terms of resources, both within the human experience in the world, how that's been just a huge deal. Learning how to deal with that, learning how to manage that. But within a greater community of intelligent life, those problems have not just magically went away. There are races that have made this transition, the same one we're going through, not very gracefully. Having destroyed their own worlds, having lost their own spirituality, only focusing on technological development above and beyond everything else. They overuse their resources. And technological development has a great danger in that way. The more you want to develop your technology, the more resources you need, so you kind of get enslaved by your own technology. Technology is great. It can advance. But the new message says that if that becomes the only focus, you become enslaved by it. Very much. Because it requires a lot of resources to do that. Constantly. And you just constantly need to get those resources. That's why these races are here. They want to have the ability to have access to certain resources in this world, even resources that we don't even know about, certain kinds of metals that exist that we don't even know about. So they want to seek partnership, a working relationship. They want to employ humanity. But in order to do that, they need to get humanity in a very, very weak state. And there's a lot of dastardly things being done to make things more chaotic than they need to be, more destructive than they need to be. I mean, a lot of people, when they look at the world, they just think, oh, humanity is just so blah and this and that. And it's like, yeah, we have our problems, but what the intervention is doing, it's identifying conflict, it's identifying certain areas of weakness, and it is magnifying them. It is amplifying them. It's blowing them way out of proportion. And it's doing this to such a degree that humanity believes that it's just human nature that is this destructive, or that it's human nature that just can't seem to, get on track. Okay? And this is how it's done in other worlds as well. Other worlds that are emerging, this kind of intervention, that's how it's done there too. They try to make things look very terrible for the emerging race so that they can step in and portray themselves as saviors with advanced technology who are here to show you the way and, welcome. They have like a big welcome mat, kind of like a red carpet. They eventually want to give this to humanity, but only when they've put humanity in a very, very desperate situation. They have, they've allied themselves with certain humans who are helping that along. And it's funny, the new message says that it's only a very small fraction of humanity that is allied with this presence. Very small fraction, but that small fraction can create such a drag effect for the evolution of the world. The whole rest of the world can feel their drag. They have enough money, they have enough clout, they have enough sway to be able to create that much drag. Things seem to be, stalled. They're not evolving as much as they could or should, especially spiritually. There seems to be a kind of oddness within and around things. I mean, that's why I don't pay attention to the media, because what's important is me and my environment and what I have direct influence on and control over. That's how I maintain my strength. But if I'm in the mental environment, if I'm just throwing myself in problems and contentions and all this, you can start to feel impotent after a while. And I've noticed that within that culture, even like the conspiracy culture, there might be things going on, but it puts you in a habit of condemnation. You're habitually condemning other human beings. And that's precisely what the intervention wants you to do. That's the mindset they want you to have. They're very much doing that kind of thing as well. Making things look way, way worse than they should be. Like, of course, yeah, that's terrible. Could be anything. Yeah, this is terrible. It's not a good thing, but you have to understand that there is another force that is amplifying that badness, really amplifying it, really magnifying it in a way to try to make it look all-encompassing, so that humanity looks hopelessly incompetent, especially on the level of leadership. Okay? Of course, you're going to have humans that are like, they're not perfect, right? But you can't lose faith in humanity, no matter what. But within all of this, things might look incompetent in all of this, but the intervention is going to try to make it look so completely incompetent that when they put their people, they're hybrids, actually, like the new message says. They're hybrids that are very well trained in what they're trying to do. When they start coming in they might seem like a godsend, right? They're saying just the right things. We're here to help, and they might even have certain kinds of disclosure lined up. Oh yeah, we're being visited, but they're here to help. You know, they're here to help. So yeah, it can be complex. It's like the new message says, it's a very complex situation that you're emerging into. Very complex. But like taking steps to knowledge, that's about engaging you with what is simple, what is fundamental to life. That's simple. It's powerful. You know, it's very intelligent. It's well beyond your intellect, which can get so wrapped up in complexities. It helps get you to this deeper place. Very powerful, very certain, very resolute, but also very intelligent. But it's a different kind of intelligence than your intellect. That is the kind of guidance that's needed in the world right now through this emergence, as things seem to be just getting more complex and more uncertain and more just, oh my goodness, you know, what's going on? That's so important to have that foundation through all of this. I know it can seem really tumultuous and there's just so much going on, but it's natural. The new message says, don't think that humanity is uniquely destructive or uniquely evil. Other races have went through this as well. There's contention with their own worlds. They're not perfect. And especially these scavenger races, you can imagine what their history looks like going back thousands of years, being pushed into this situation that they're in. You can only imagine. There's been wars. There's been conflicts. There's some things that have happened that are not pleasant at all. It's not just humanity that is warlike and terrible. You know, again, that's what the intervention wants you to believe. Humanity is uniquely evil, uniquely destructive. You know, when I see people who are they're habitually condemning of humanity, I see intervention influence at work. Habitually condemning other people. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Sometimes I get upset, but I start to see the nature of it, you know. I definitely don't get into that habit anymore. That's partly why I stay away from the internet so much. I'm not looking for arguments and contentions and all that. If I do look for anything, I'm trying to find something that may be inspiring. Great art. I don't immerse myself in it as much as I used to, but every once in a while I'll go and check it out. Because it's inspiring to see people overcoming hardship while at the same time giving great gifts to the world. Great gifts in artistry or great gifts in humanitarian work, you know. Through all the difficulties, there's still selfless giving. That's inspiring. They're still overcoming things. But just giving into it, you know, giving into the difficulty and oh, things are so difficult, I'll just blame the world, because that's easy. I know, I've gone down that path. It's very easy to do. It's very tempting to do it. And in a way, the intervention is making it very tempting. Making it very, very tempting. Because in a way, even though it's a very low vibe, so to speak, it makes you feel better about yourself. You see terribleness, and you're like, it's easy to condemn it. Of course, it's not a good thing. But it kind of gives you this false sense of elevation. And, you know, when you continually doing that, the comparison and the condemnation, you know, of course, it momentarily makes you feel better about yourself. Like, I would never do that. You know, kind of like morally superior in so many ways. Like, yeah, you might be much more moral and ethical than some of the things taking place. But constantly doing that you know, the people you're judging all the time, they lose their humanity in your mind. The ability to have compassion for others just becomes less and less and less. But when you can understand things, sort of like with these other beings, it doesn't mean you condone what they're doing, but you can understand. You can come to more deeply understand why they're doing what they're doing. Separation is difficult. It's very difficult here. Beings just want to have security. They want to get theirs. They want to be able to, have assurance of a future of some kind at least. Okay? Beings in this world can be driven into very cold and calculating states of survival. And it's no different in this greater community of life. But there are beings that have achieved great self-sufficiency, great discretion, great unity among their own race, and even great spiritual attainment with knowledge. And that becoming such a motivating factor, that informs so much of how the world continues to evolve. That exists as well. So within this greater community environment, it's just like nature, but more. It's nature, but more of everything. It's more amazing. It's more inclusive, but you also have things that are more terrible, things that are more extreme. It's just more extreme in every way. So, of course, you have decisions about what you choose to listen to, so to speak, in your deeper self. What are you choosing to listen to? What are you really gravitating toward? The intervention is really working the dissonance angle. They want you really, really paying attention to that. Of course, you want to be able to recognize things. But if you're not bringing the remedy, you become part of the problem. In just being on that level of dissonance, you become dissonant yourself. And whatever coherence you may have been able to bring to it, it starts to become less and less effective. This inner coherence is so important. And that inner coherence is in relationship with this broader environment, with other races that have achieved high levels of coherence. That coherence is there. It's very natural. The dissonance is there as well. It's part of the nature of things. So you have this decision. You have this choice to make. And when you get to a place of no choice, where you have no choice, where necessity becomes the mother of invention, so to speak, because it is. Necessity will drive you to that state of no choice, and then, like the new message says, that's where real freedom is. It seems like a contradiction. It seems like a paradox, but it's so very important. Just like in people with their personal life, they only change when they need to, when there's no choice. Like with, I know in my own experience, I only changed my diet and started to get things in order when I had to. My kidneys started failing. I was in a lot of pain. There were other things going on, and I had no choice. There was no choice. I had to start getting things in order. But I can tell you if my kidneys were not in severe pain every day, and if everything just seemed fine, I would still be eating terribly. Right? Think about it like that. And it's the same thing with a society, a civilization. It's the same thing within this greater community. Necessity is the driving factor. And in order for a race to be self-determined and free in this greater environment, it is necessary to have self-sufficiency, discretion, and unity. It's a necessity. You can't go around those things. Those things cannot be worked around. So, I enjoyed having this talk, and I may be speaking again on it at a later time. So thanks for watching.